What's going on, you guys? It's been a little while since I dropped some material on black and brown communities, man. I know that I ruffled a lot of feathers here on social media, putting a lot of hot topics on the platform, man, and it made a lot of people feel uncomfortable because a lot of people don't know. We have this idea that life only exists through our lens, like only our perspective is valid or is real when there's other people that exist in our communities and we don't know their perspectives. Like there's people from my city that are not from my area that have a different outlook of my city than me. And even in my relationship, like my wife has a different perspective of this relationship than I do. We have some similarities, but she has her own perspective and I have my own. So even with that intimate of a space, we share a different perspective. We have different outlooks and we're affected differently by each other because I'm not affected by me. She is. She's not affected by her. I am, at least on a conscious level, where we can see it. So what I wanted to talk about was the idea that just because we exist in the same space, in the same community, it doesn't mean that we're all the same. And I think that I learned that being on social media and getting some of the backlash from a lot of black people that were not from my community, some Mexicans that were not from my community, or even Mexicans that were from my community just didn't have the experiences that I have. Because there's Mexicans from my area that were not exposed to the people that I was exposed to. I come from a very, very interesting city, right? And I think that a lot of homies, as I've grown, as I evolved and learned, I met a lot of people from LA. In San Diego, I never met a lot of people from LA before. It's not until I came out to the Inland Empire that I met a lot of people from LA. Then I started going to LA, right? So then you start seeing other people over there that it's like, well, this is kind of like how we grew up in a certain way where there's a lot of black and brown people. And you start to think that they are like the same black and brown people that are where you're from. So you think that they think like how you think, but you learn that it's a little bit different. Some similarities, but there's a little bit of a difference. And in that little pocket of a little bit of a difference has a lot of branches because there's a lot of differences. But in the overall grand scheme of things, it's a little bit of a difference. There's just a lot of differences in there. So at the very minimum, we have to respect each other's perspectives and outlooks from the very simple foundation idea that their mental space is different than your mental space. So how they calculate information is different than how you calculate information. So just because you guys, like I speak a lot about my childhood, or I used to speak a lot about my childhood, growing up with black and brown homies and Samoan homies and stuff like that. But they had a different perspective of the same environment that I was in. So just because I looked at it like, this ain't no problem, blacks are my homies, the Samoan homies are my homies. I don't know how they looked at it. You know what I'm saying? So as we get older and now you're in a different environment, I'm still around black and brown people, but everybody's perspective is different. And you start to bumping heads with people because they're like, they don't like you doing too many things that's like familiar to black culture, which that's a whole nother conversation. I've made an episode about culture before. We have to be sensitive to that. And we're not sensitive to that. And me included. So as you learn, right? So just because I know a lot about black culture, right? I've been around a lot of black people. So I know about what a lot of black people do in their homes and everything. Like I stayed the night at friends' houses, etc. I've been to church with them, all that stuff. Just because of that, it doesn't mean that I have special access. And I think that's what I learned on social media the most, where I learned how to respect that part. At first, I was just kind of like, some people were like, "You're trying to be black, bro. You think you're black?" And it's just like, nah, it's not that. I just didn't know how to articulate it at the time, right? Now I know how to articulate it. And it's like, what I didn't know how to do was be in someone else's culture or being in somebody else's environment and being okay with being in their environment. Even if I'm welcomed, even if I'm an honorary member of it, whatever the case may be, understanding that that's their space, I think that's a very unique detail that we should all consider. Just because you're black, white, Samoan, Filipino, and you're around a bunch of Mexicans, and then we say, "Nah, homie, you're one of us," and all that. It's like, yeah, you're an honorable Mexican, honorary Mexican for the day. You still have to be like, well, this is their shit. You know, I'm going to partake. I'm going to eat. I'm going to dance. But something in your mind fundamentally, no matter how much of a family environment it is, no matter how much love is in the air, something inside of you has to say, this is still theirs. And I think that little detail is important because that's something that's what's crossing a lot of it's crossing a lot of wires, and it's been crossing a lot of wires. And I think right now one of the most popular argument is with music. You're seeing a lot of Mexican homies rap, and they carry a lot of black mannerisms because of the black rappers, and they're getting labeled, like, you guys are trying to be black, you guys are using the N-word. And I think that if we just put this idea out there, like, for all the Mexican homies, don't get me wrong, man, if you kick it with black homies, they'll call you the N-word just like anybody else. And if you say it back in return, they won't think nothing of it. Again, there's just because you hang around black homies that let you say that, you may come across another black person that is not okay with that. And I think that, again, going back to this idea, like, that's part of their culture, right? That's part of their language. And that's just something that they've introduced to us. And we have to learn how to say, well, that's their shit. They have to do the same for us. Whites have to do the same for us. Asians, Samoans, we all have to do that to each other, but we don't do it because we've been taught as kids that we're all together, we're all friends. Hey, one fight, you all fight. You have one soda, and it's four of you. You guys all share the soda, and that's all cool and all. But as you get older, reality hits, the truth hits, and society hits, and this system starts to hit. You start to see what this system is really, really designed like. So you have Mexicans that are not okay with you being hanging around whites, hanging around Samoans, hanging around blacks, hanging around Asians. You have Asians that are not okay. You know what I mean? Like, everybody has their own group of people who accept it, and then everybody has their own group of people who don't accept it. And I realized, obviously me, I'm a deep thinker, so I was just wondering, like, how is that? How could that be so? And watching the rapper homies rap, and they're actually doing really well these days. So shout out to all the Mexican rappers, man. They're actually doing really well. I'm not a fan of Chicano rap whatsoever. I've never been, but now I like Mexican rappers. They're doing well. And even though the culture of rap music is predominantly black commercially as we know it, something inside of you has to still be like, that's theirs, right? And I think once you put that little mechanism into play, I think things will be a lot better, because then the black homies will be able to look at us and be like, that's their shit. Yeah, they're rapping and they have swagger and all that, but they're still keeping their shit. So it's easier for them to accept. It'll be easier for them to welcome. But if like I said, some black homies are not used to listening to that Mexican homie say the N-word. So that's already off the bat. So we're creating a distortion, and we're trying to force a a square into a circle. So, and that just goes, that's going to cover, that's a solution for a lot of things across the board, not just music. The moment that you respect the idea, you don't have to respect nobody. You don't have to respect a culture more than yours or another one, this culture more than that culture, or race or ethnicity more than anything. It's not about that. It's about you respecting the idea that something belongs to someone else. Then that's when you start to understand what I'm saying. Trust me, I've been on social media a while, and I used to get on here and talk heavy. And I pushed a lot of buttons. I ruffled a lot of feathers. And some people disconnected from me. A lot of people stayed around. Some people, there was some turbulence with some of the people that stayed with me because they were just trying to see what my intention was. And I think once they saw where I was coming from, they realized that it wasn't from a negative space. It was from a person trying to repair or trying to bring understanding to the table to both parties, both groups of people. And I say, like I said, I speak on black and brown all the time because that's the community that I have always been a part of. My kids are black and brown. You guys look at go to my camera work over there, the Hogwan Media page. It ain't nothing but black and brown over there in my photos. So that's just my community. I don't have to go nowhere to go find this shit. You know what I mean? Like we're just where I am. Everywhere I am, there we are. So that's just how it's always been since I've been here. I've been in this country since I was 5 years old. So that's all I know, right? So, but what I'm learning as I'm getting older and I'm getting more mature, you got some black homies that are like, man, we don't give a fuck. You guys say the N-word. And then some blacks are like, nah, nobody should say it unless it's black. All right, cool. Then you have some Mexicans who are like, hey, that's just how we talk. That's just how we grew up. That's just what it is. Okay, cool. And then you have some Mexicans that are like, nah, nobody should say that word, right? So there's a conflict there, and there's always going to be conflict there. So I was thinking about it like, well, how could we fix it then? And then that's when I came to that conclusion. Like, I think if everyone were to just respect each other's what belongs to each other, and I think that's a start, because this country is populated by everybody that's not from here. So we all have our own that we brought to the table to give to the culture, to the American culture. And everybody gets to use it. Everybody gets to eat tacos. Everybody gets to do everything that we brought to the table. But certain parts of our culture, because you grew up with us and we grew up with you, we have to respect the fact that, nah, that's theirs. It's like going into your house, it's like, go ahead and get what you want. And then you go in there and you grab a Coke, right? Your homie's mom says you can get a juice, and you see a Coke in there, and you're like, ooh, I want that Coke. And then the mom's like, that's mine. It's like, oh, you can have something to drink, you just can't have her Coke. And I think that's how our cultures can be. You can be a part of it, but just respect that some of that stuff just belongs to us and them and they. You know what I mean? So I hope you guys got something out of this, man. You guys know that I always try to bring some kind of logic to the table, man, because I know the distortion. I know the cross wires that are out here, and they're all minor. That all of it is minor. That's why when black and Mexicans get into it, it's always like a minor situation that we could have resolved. And I think that's just me bringing a solution to the table, man. So I hope you guys hear this out. I hope you guys share it with people, and I hope it strikes conversation with you guys amongst your circle. And I hope that you guys start to practice those little things like, nah, that's theirs. Oh, okay, I could have some. Okay, cool. But I know that's you guys's, like I can use certain lingo, but certain lingo is just for you guys. Okay, bet. Like, that's respectable. That's understandable. And I think that will just alleviate a lot of problems, man. So I didn't mean to go this far with this episode, but I just wanted to break it down extra. I wanted to get the ice, not into cubes, but I wanted to shave it. I don't want no problems. You guys digesting this information. All right, guys. Peace.